Hi, let's talk about for loops. All right. I am currently in my in-house cloud console in the function builder, currently with the tutorial demo function open. So here I have two statements, two steps in my workflow. I just have one workflow. So, the first step is basically declaring a variable called list, and it's just a list of numbers. And the other is a count field that basically is just like an accumulator, right? So what we want to do with this function is basically get the sum of every um, number in this list added together, and we would like to do this using a for loop. So we're going to write this loop twice. The first time with 100% no code. The second time, we're going to write this with code. All right. So with the in-house function builder, you have the flexibility to write with code, or you have the flexibility to write without code. All right. And we're going to do both. All right. So let's jump in and start. So the first iteration of this is going to be without code. So I'm going to add a step. I'm going to call this, I'm going to look for my for loop function. All right. So here, basically, this is a standard loop syntax. I have my iterator. It's starting at 0. I'm going to say that I want it to be less than, right? And I want it to be less than the list, which is a variable that we have referenced over here, or at least we have it declared over here. We're referencing it over here. And we're going to use a method to get the length of that list. And we're going to use the length method. Okay. So basically, I'm starting my index at 0. I'm starting my iterator at 0. The iterator will stop uh, right before the length of the list, and I'm going to be counting upwards. Okay. So here, what I'm going to do is I am going to reference the count variable. So if you try to, you cannot name a variable. Um, You cannot name two variables the same thing, but you can reference variables after they've been declared by just selecting the variable. And the system would put it in this syntax to let you know that although this count and this are the same, they're indeed the same because of uh, it's a reference. And also at each step, we basically keep a track of what the value is at that step. So there's also another variable here called 2296T BXWJ. And this is just, another variable that basically will have the same value as this count has in this particular step. Just something you should know. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that I would like to add the count, which will be the current count. I'm going to add it to, let's see, I'm going to add it to the value of the current item in the list. And how do we get that? We get that from referencing the variable, the list, and mapping into the current index, which we get from the iterator. That would be index. Look for it over here. And that's that. So basically, I've just done a quick loop. I'm basically setting my accumulator. I'm basically adding it to whatever the current index in my loop, or whatever the current step in my loop is. Um, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to add a final step, and we're just going to return some data. It's going to return. We're going to just say this is going to be an object. We're going to return, I'm going to call this count, and it's just going to be the count variable. That's it. I'm going to save this. I am going to deploy this function. So this function is currently used in our an API that I have set up already, so I can test it out. So I'm just going to remove this, ping it, and I get a count of 102. Right? So if we did, 25 plus 30 plus 25 plus 10 plus 7 plus 6 plus 4, you would get 102. So we basically just use the for loop, to loop over our data, and we've just added to our accumulator. This is a very, very basic computation. So, but the key takeaway here in this no code implementation of a for loop is a few things. One, the iterator, right? It's always going to be a unique iterator, regardless of how many for loops you have in a function. It's always going to be unique. You can set where it starts from, right? The start position, right? It's not fixed. You could configure this to whatever you want. You could start from the top and iterate backwards. You could start from the bottom, iterate forward. You could start from the middle. It's up to you. You get to pick the condition of the iteration. Do you want it to go, uh, above zero or up to the, to the list length, whatever you want. You get to set the upper limit or the lower limit, right? Depending on if you're going upwards or backwards, right? And you get to decide, are you iterating, are you looping forward or are you looping backwards, right? So this is pretty much all the standard tenets of a for loop, regardless of whatever programming language, be it, JavaScript, Java, it doesn't matter. This is pretty standard across programming languages. Okay. So this is, one way of doing this. Now we're going to do this a separate way. We're going to do this, um, we're going to do this, without any of the no code functions. We're just going to use 100% code. All right. So now what we're going to do here in this case is this. We're going to come to this function here. I'm just going to change this. We're just going to change this to code. So basically by saying we want to use code, our text, our, code editor, opens up and we can now write some scripts. So I'm just going to say function. I'm going to pass the list into my function. Right. I am going to set an accumulator. Initialize an accumulator as, let's say, 0. Then I'm going to do a for loop, which is pretty much the same thing that we just did with the no code steps. Our loop is going to be for loop, and here we're going to say that the accumulator is equals to the accumulator plus the list item at the iterator's index. And then what we're going to do is that we are going to return the accumulator, right? And because we want this to be, because, we want this to execute as an expression, we're going to wrap this in a script expression. We're going to pass in our variable. And to pass in our variable, we just type in variable list. That's it. And in our return statement, we could do the same thing. We could just say, this will work as is, but I'm just going to go 100% code. I'm going to just change this. We're going to return an object. I believe we said count, and we are referencing the variable count. That's it. Deploy our function. All right, the last time it was 102. We expect it to stay the same. 102. Awesome. So basically, we've done this two different ways. We've used um, no code, and we just turned around and wrote it with 100%. Well, not 100% code, but with like 99% code, right? And just showing you the dexterity of the in-house cloud function builder. If you are a citizen developer, who doesn't necessarily know the ins and outs of code, you could basically just use the no code steps. But if you are a seasoned software developer and you're more comfortable just writing code, you can do that as well. All right. See you in the next video.